Hello, everyone. My name is Rafal, and I would like to welcome everyone to my Headshot Photography podcast. Today, I have amazing guest. Taylor Jackson is in the house. We spoke for a little bit prior we went live. So I just want to say that I've been a big fan not only of your work but all the educational content you're putting out. It's pretty amazing. Helped me tremendously in my work. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for not only just putting all this amazing work out there, but also to accepting the invitation and joining the podcast. I have a lot of questions, so I know it's going to be interesting conversation because you've got not a lot of experience, but you've been in this industry for quite some time. So I truly value your opinions on so many things which are happening right now in our industry.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out, and I'm happy that we could find the time.
Absolutely. So let me start with asking you, because this is usually my first question, because everyone has their own story getting into photography. And I notice through all those interviews I've done so far that it looks like someone just want, like most people discover this amazing talent they have, and all of a sudden they becoming photographers, and they just turning their life and they getting into this whole interesting world of photography. So I want to know your story. How did you get into it? It was some kind of passion before, or that was the kind of graduate way of getting into it? Like, what is your story?
Yeah, so I'm gonna say growing up, there were always cameras around, but I feel like it wasn't more cameras than normal. Like my dad took pictures, but it wasn't he wasn't a photographer. He didn't own a studio or anything. It was just like vacation cam, AE1. And then probably when I was about maybe 13, I got into I was in a band, and so we would be playing lots of shows, and it was almost as much fun to go to the show and take pictures of my friends as it was to be on stage and perform as an amateur bass player. And I realized pretty quickly that those photos had a lot more value as well. That when I could create something that actually made people look cool, or maybe got them in a magazine, that at least for them, they wanted me to come to all the events now. So now all of a sudden I'm getting all these requests for me to go to their concerts, even if I'm not playing in one of the opening bands. And I'm going to say that was probably like maybe a 5-year period of my life. I connected with I'm from Canada, and I connected with a magazine out of Toronto, and they kind of set me up with a press pass to get into any of the concerts that I wanted to see, which was really cool. Didn't pay any money, but you got front row access to most of the concerts that you would probably have wanted to go to anyways, and you don't kind of buy tickets. You get backdoor access, so you don't have to wait in lines. It was really, really awesome. I got to meet a lot of my favorite musicians as well, which was really cool. That was the super fun aspect of it. And then there was also kind of a local close to home aspect as well. So I'd be shooting like really great venues in Toronto with perfect lighting. And then I would come back and I would shoot my friends' bands in kind of dingy basement clubs with maybe like two par cans. And like, that's the entire lighting rig. So I kind of got comfortable shooting with that, but this was also like 2002, 2003. And high ISO performance of cameras, not so good. Autofocus and low light. Actually, looking back, was pretty decent on DSLR, but it was definitely it didn't look as cool as the shows I was shooting at nice clubs in Toronto. So I started to get into off-camera flash and kind of bringing my own light show. And now all of a sudden, people would play this crappy-looking club, and their photos would look like they're on like the main stage at like a big concert venue, and they were even more excited to have me. Unfortunately, no local bands really. The joke is basically that if you're in a band, you're kind of a traveling t-shirt shop. That's the only way you're really making money. So none of my friends are making money, so I wasn't asking for money to come out to shows. I'd work for t-shirts or just for a nice experience. One of the best experiences I had, and maybe one of the things that made me realize that I wanted to be some sort of documentary photographer. One of my friend's bands was recording with an engineer that did an At the Drive-In record, which was one of my favorite bands at the time. And my friends were now recording with this guy in Brooklyn, and they were like, do you want to come and just do some behind the scenes photos and do some band press photos for a new record? And that sounded like a lot of fun. So I got in their camo painted short bus, and we drove down to New York City. Arrived at like 4 a.m, drove through Times Square. My first time in New York. I'm like maybe 19 at this point. And it was just a really, really cool experience. And I realized that that's something that I very much enjoy doing, both the photography and documentary. And I feel like that's also kind of where the video came in as well, that I wanted a better way to capture those experiences and a way to look back on them. And around then I realized that it was what I wanted to do, but paycheck wise, not really existing. So I was in school for computer programming, which is, I realized after my first co-op position that it probably wasn't something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I was working there kind of 9 to 5 through the summer, and then I was also working at Outback Steakhouse as a server. I worked all the positions at that Outback Steakhouse, and then eventually, not because of me, but Outback Canada went out of business. There's still one in Alberta, I think, Edmonton though.
Okay.
And other than that, they've kind of gone out of business. So I didn't really have a job there anymore. So I basically went on Google and I searched for what kind of photographers actually make money. That's the whole story. It wasn't like a getting into weddings for the passion of it. It was that I had the gear, I had the skills, I enjoyed the process of it, and I wanted to figure out how to make it a job. That there were a few people making it in photography still, but the magazine industry had already pretty much collapsed, and it was very difficult to get any sort of kind of news work as well. And I figured that, like, hey, weddings are they're kind of fun. I hadn't been to a wedding, I don't think, as an adult. I was a ring bearer when I was like 6. And then I'm like, I'm going to try this. This looks fun. And it turns out that it was all of the skills that I learned in concert photography crossed over into weddings. That you're capturing kind of those fast moments in variable lighting conditions, sometimes bad, sometimes decent. Sometimes you got to bring your own lighting in. You got to work with whatever you have. And most of the time it's set up to be a prettier experience. So it's a little bit easier to make something that looks pretty as well. And then people, it's kind of the same as concerts. They just wanted to look cool and show how much fun they're having with their friends. And that's kind of the start of weddings for me. I realized that once I wanted to get into weddings, I needed to build a portfolio. So I just got all of my friends. So now the payment was that if a band wanted press photos, I'd be like, yeah, no problem. I'll do them for free, unless you're like, if you have a label or something, maybe there's a deal. But if they're just an independent band that I'm friends with, no problem. I'll do your press photos. But any of you that are currently in a relationship or wants photos with a partner, we're going to go out and we're going to do an engagement couple style shoot. So at the time I would shoot them in the same locations pretty much, that we'd do kind of those back alleys with unnecessary off-camera lighting. And that was kind of the start of my portfolio. So I kind of piggybacked it off of a need that people had and a need that I had, and it didn't really cost either of us money. I got to build a portfolio that started attracting my ideal clients. And I basically just started to work for my friends every single weekend at weddings. So it was a lot of fun. And then now it's kind of been, I'm going to say 20 years since I shot my first wedding. I've also gotten into YouTube content. I did my first YouTube video in 2008. I wrote a book in 2007. So I've just been kind of doing random things for a little while. And now I would say YouTube and content, I guess, like kind of in general, is maybe 40% of my job now. I'd say like 60 is still the wedding photography and commercial work and doing video for production. And then the other percentage, especially in the winter, I kind of go seasonally. The other percentage is typically some sort of YouTube or some sort of work for other companies for their YouTube channels or speaking gigs, stuff like that. So everything that's kind of come from developing some sort of presence on YouTube.
So tell me, how was that switch? Because this is something the reason I'm asking, because I remember when I started like sharing my knowledge, and I know at the beginning we all kind of learning as we go, but I think was so important in my case that, the more I was sharing what I know, the more traction I was getting. And then I noticed that, like you have the same kind of pattern. Like, you started sharing your information, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experiences, shooting weddings. And that's kind of gets you like really traction with your business. Can you tell me about that switch with YouTube? Because I know like a lot of photographers going different types of platforms. Like there's some which are focusing on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. But you specifically choose YouTube, which I think, looking back, like I think I made that mistake, because I should go more into the videos rather than images and Instagram, this kind of like visual side. But I don't know, lesson learned. I have to just kind of switch right now. But tell me about your approach, like, when you kind of got on the YouTube and you start, because like some of the stuff what I've noticed um on the YouTube like was so authentic. Like you were just saying, okay, this is the way it goes, this is the reality, this is not like glamorous thing you have to make things work. And being also a wedding photographer, I know that I deeply believe that every photographer should go for at least one season of shooting weddings, because this is what really train you to solve problems, to work as you go. You have to make things work, doesn't matter where you are, what you do. It's amazing training for any photographer. But going back to my question is, tell me about your like kind of entry into the YouTube and how that kind of impact your business, your workflow, your like pretty much everything.
Yeah, so going way back, so even before YouTube, when I was first trying to learn how to do photography, it was a pre-YouTube time, and there were very few people that were actually making video content on how to be a photographer. I think it was like Chase Jarvis and Jerry Guionis was one of the first
Yes.
people to bring a camera behind the scenes at a wedding day. So I would say that Jerry specifically inspired me a lot and has inspired what I do to this day in terms of the education side of things. But I think it was pretty much born out of a lack of, I guess, any sort of content that was kind of what I was doing, how I would shoot a wedding. That like, I love Jerry and I love what he does, but he is definitely a different photographer than I am on a wedding day. So I wanted to kind of showcase what I do, because I feel like it's, I don't know, it's a very easy way to photograph a wedding. And it's, I don't know, stress levels are a lot lower, and it just seems like a more kind of chill wedding day experience. And I wanted to figure out how to put that out for hopefully other people to see, to realize that, hey, there are many different ways you can do this. And yeah, that was like Vimeo. I think a bunch of my first videos were up there, and going way back, a photographer named Becker had a thing called the B School, and it was kind of like an open community that you could upload your own educational stuff there, which was kind of cool. He was probably 12 years too early on the release of that product, maybe, but overall, it was just like, I enjoyed making videos. Videos were how I was learning. I saw at the time, now it's definitely a saturated market, but at the time it was very undersaturated. There was not a lot of people doing video content, and not a lot of people really sharing much to do with the photography business side of things as well, that it was a very closed doors system. I know Chase Jarvis specifically got like actual death threats for showing kind of behind the scenes of how the commercial photography industry works. And yeah, it was like he went through some weird times just by being the first guy that was just the loudest, and he had cool jobs. He'd do a shoot like a golf major brand, and he would bring cameras behind the scenes and show all of it and talk about how he got the job and what the numbers looked like and everything. And the industry at large, I don't think wanted to hear that. But then anyone that was just getting into the industry, there was an insatiable demand for that style of content. So I think that's kind of what I went for. And I definitely started teaching way before. I feel like everyone probably does, but you start teaching way before you probably should be. But it definitely helps you also get your skills a little bit more dialed. That I know if I'm at a wedding and I'm doing some sort of educational piece of content, like not only do I have to do a good job for my couple, but I also have to do something even better beyond that maybe pushes myself. So
that's why I always admire you for that. I'm like, you know what, this is enough stress already, shooting a wedding, especially those intense ones. And on the top of it, you have a crew and you just sharing your knowledge. It's another like layer of things you have to do, which was always extremely inspiring for me that you were able to do that. Because well, based on my experience, like I know weddings like you were going really focus on, right? Like it's just you get in, you put your mind into it. And then I remember like literally after every wedding, like you just mentally exhausted, right? Because you just on your toes, throughout entire day to make things work, to capture all those moments, to don't miss anything, to just think ahead. So like your brain is constantly on fire to make it work. But adding additional thing to educate people on the top of what you're already doing, this is pretty incredible. So
yeah, it's a lot of voiceover whenever it's a stressful day. And then if we do have time and there's breaks in the schedule, then we'll actually do on-camera stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's fun. It's another level of like, I was doing photography for a long time. And then 2010, I started doing video as well. So as one person, I do photo and video coverage. And then maybe like 2015, I started doing behind the scenes as well. So it's like I do the photography, I do a highlight film, and then I also do behind the scenes at a lot of wedding days. And I feel like it's born out of a creative challenge, I guess, to myself originally, and then to refine the process. So I don't know what I can add next. I feel like that's maybe it. I feel like those are the how much you can possibly do in a day.
Yeah, I'm sure time will show. There's always. I think what is amazing about photography in general that this constantly changing, right? Like, even if you look 10, 20 years, like the evolution we went through is just insane. Like we would never thought this is we're gonna get at this point, but it's still evolving and still changing. And so let me ask you this. I have a question for you regarding the business, and then we talk a little bit that one of the biggest challenges for photographers is just making money out of photography. And then I think this discussion is just ongoing for years. So what, in your opinion, is the biggest, I would say, mistake photographers do when it comes to the business?
I think, at least to speak to my mistakes and maybe some of the things that I did correctly as well. I think one of my mistakes was definitely trying to charge a lot of money, maybe before I was able to do that consistently. I think one of the good things that I did were those kind of trade for those concert people to do some photos with their partner. I feel like that worked pretty well, that I wasn't out to generate revenue instantly, that I needed to build my portfolio. I think that's still something that kind of sticks with me today, is that if I have a cool shoot opportunity, or if I'm going to execute some sort of styled shoot, I am happy to do that on my own dime in order to create that portfolio that I want to exist in the world, that will hopefully kind of go as a circle, that it will attract those ideal clients, and then I'll get booked to actually do that style of that work. I would say starting probably with your friends was a good thing that I did. And eventually I would say just focusing really hard on the business side of things, because I came at the industry as a photographer and I really didn't know anything about business. I went to school for something completely unrelated, and to just spend like maybe 3 or 4 years just kind of in audiobooks and learning everything that there is to know, at least to get started, I think was also very valuable. We fortunately now live in a world that has so much information out there that it's pretty easy to learn all this stuff now. And then the big thing I think for me was that I really just don't ever want to give up control of my portfolio, that I want to keep building in the correct direction. I also definitely fell into the trap of including images in my portfolio that probably should not have been there. But I just wanted to like prove that I had been to a wedding, but I wasn't really showing a wedding that my ideal client would look at and be like, oh yeah, Taylor's going to fit into our day. They're kind of probably looking at the pictures being like, okay, that's a choice someone made. And yeah, I think just if you're building your your portfolio in the right direction, the money will, as simple as it sounds, I guess, the money will follow that. You have to price yourself in the correct market as well. So you can't just like come up with a random price and be like, I charge $87,000 for a wedding. You have to kind of do roughly what the market is doing. Again, a positive of an oversaturated market is that the market's already been set and there's an accepted price. So you can hop in there pretty quickly usually. And then another thing that I would do to book early work was to do some sort of, in weddings specifically, it was like a free engagement session. So if someone inquired, I would say that like, hey, like, and this was for people that seemed qualified that I wanted to work with. I would say, hey, how about we go and do an engagement session? I'll give you 10 images, no cost at all. It has to be local. If you want the full package of everything we shot, it's an additional dollar amount, but let's just go do some pictures. And if you decide that you like the experience, you want to book with me, feel free. And I would say a lot of those couples ended up booking before the shoot. So by them agreeing to do the shoot was almost like enough of a commitment that they're like, oh yeah, like this guy's confident enough in his work to do a free shoot with us. Like maybe we do want to book him for the wedding.
That's really smart actually, because that's just, you put them on the spot and then, like you already have this connection with them.
Yeah. But it's also selfish because I want portfolio and I need things to post and I want to get better doing what I want to do. And also I want to, I don't know, experiment and see what lenses actually work for me and what ones don't. Because that was another thing that I would go to an engagement shoot with like 25 lenses, maybe not 25, but like
welcome.
Probably five lenses. And I would cycle through them and it like really ruined the flow of the shoot. And then once I realized I probably shot every engagement session from like 2010 until like 2016 with an 85 millimeter 1.4, and like that was it. I'd have other stuff in my bag like just in case, but I would pretty much do the entire shoot on that. And just by kind of focusing on that and knowing that like, hey, this is my kit, there's no reason to change. It helped me get a better flow with my couples, and I think made better images overall. But had I not been doing probably way too many engagement sessions, I probably wouldn't have found that aspect of my style and kind of what I enjoyed doing, I guess, for that style of shoot.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? I remember, well, back in the days, yeah, that was one of the biggest challenges with all this, overflow of equipment, that we have so much in our disposal that we were going absolutely crazy. But I want to go back to one of those things which just kind of came to my head, and it's also applying to like the stuff what I do right now, which is headshot photography. But I remember building on my portfolio with my wedding clients back in the days, and I applied this entire process into my headshot and portrait photography. That I had those like selling images. So I shot some weddings, let's say in Mexico, or I don't know, just some amazing places. And I remember I was booking clients here in Calgary, and they saw like this one image which kind of like trigger everybody, like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like we want to book you. And it was so fascinating for me that clients could book you based on like one image, which, was in the location. They're never going to be there. The wedding is a completely different place, but something was in that picture that just make them convinced that we want to work with you. And I think, when you mentioned about building the portfolio, that's one of the biggest things. And doesn't matter what genre of photography you are in. Like if you have those images which really trigger people, you can be very successful fairly quickly, if you have to just figure out which ones to use. So I remember I used to meet with my clients and just showing them albums and just looking at them, which image really catch their attention, and then removing those ones which were just like, they're going like through, and those ones which really kind of like, they could, I don't know, I could notice that there is something going on. They can see something more than just the picture. That's what I was just kind of like putting them in, because I knew if I can show 20 images like this for them, one of them will for sure trigger them, and they're gonna book the wedding. So yeah, that's interesting. So let's kind of switch the gears and let's a little bit talk about, well, we talk a little bit about the business, but marketing side. What, in your opinion, is, well, because this whole marketing spectrum is changing over the last 10, 15 years. And then now we have to promote ourselves completely different. I also noticed that the pictures itself, they don't work anymore. There has to be something more than just the portfolio and images. So tell me a little bit more. What is your approach? Like, I know you have this really established YouTube channel, which also I think attracts a lot of people. But is there any other ways we should look at promoting ourselves to get the attention and get those potential clients?
Yeah, there's, I guess, a few good things. So kind of going back to your point about showing clients and getting that, and knowing which images are those triggers or the ones that they connect a lot better with. You can now do that on social media, which is really nice. So yeah, if you post a still image as a single photo on Instagram, it's probably not going to do 1,000 likes, but if you post that one and it gets 50, and then you post another one and it gets 150, that's a pretty good example. Trying to keep things consistent. Like maybe you post Monday, like you do a test image Mondays at 11 a.m. or something. So there's some consistency to it. But that's a pretty good way to figure out maybe which images the public ranks a little bit higher in their opinion and stand out a little bit more to them. As photographers, I feel like we're just super close to our work, so it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. And we also have additional context behind images of why that image works and why it's important and why it's an emotional moment, whereas other people as third parties just might not. So social media is a pretty good place to just kind of experiment with that and see which images should maybe be the key images on your website or key images on social media that are pinned at the top. I would say overall though, for at least my marketing, so I'm like 20 years into this, so I think it's a little bit different now. I'm a preferred vendor at a bunch of venues, and I would say that that's kind of one of the keys for me consistently booking like just big seasons still. But looking maybe 10 years ago when I was a preferred vendor at maybe one spot, I just did a lot of paid ads. So I would, again, kind of litmus test and see what worked on social media. And if something organically did really well, I would make that into a paid ad of some sort, knowing that like, hey, this is already getting shared around. This is showing up on people's feeds. Now I'm going to put some money behind it and see how far that can go. I always have had a big focus on creating just very valuable content as well. So when it comes to blog posts, it's not just going to be like, hey, here's some wedding photos from this venue. It's going to be very keyword rich and very targeted for anyone searching for whatever the venue name is, weddings. Or if you're in a bigger market, you might even have to get more specific. I think around here, there's maybe about 1 million people. And I think it's there's a lot of photographers, but I would say overall it's a pretty reasonable market. If you're in a New York City or you're trying to market in New York City, it's going to be even more difficult for social media or for SEO. So it makes sense to get even more specific. And again, you can write and target your exact ideal clients. Like picture yourself, you just got engaged. What's the first thing you're typing into Google? Do you want to find a venue? Do you want to find locations? Do you want to find a photographer? And coming up with those content pieces to put in there long-term on social media. And then beyond that, all of those content pieces could either become some sort of an Instagram reel. So if you decide that, hey, I'm going to do like the 5 best venues in 2025 for this for the city that I live in, that's going to be a good blog post, but it's also going to be a good reel. And then if you can take it one step further and you can do a YouTube video and you can be on camera and be like, hey, here are some pictures that I took from these 5 venues and some things you need to know about them. And then if you want to go even above that, and I think one of the keys to becoming a preferred vendor is by just being able to make other people money. So if you can prove that you can kind of be some sort of marketing asset for a venue, they're probably going to want to take you a little bit more seriously, and you have a much better shot of getting on that list. So I would also be going to venues and being like, hey, can I interview one of your sales staff? And can you tell me about like, hey, so here we are in this room. This room has room for the max capacity is 350 people. This is how it comes set up default, but you can upgrade these options. And if you can do a little walkthrough like that and you can make them a nice piece, you're going to be fast tracked to that vendor list. But then you're also creating, again, kind of all trickles down. You're going to make those reels, you're going to make a few good images, you're going to make a blog post, and it kind of all works together. So I would say kind of having a full circle marketing strategy like that, and also knowing that it's the more effort, it's going to take a little bit more effort in this current year, especially if you live in a market with a lot of other photographers, that you do have to go a little bit above and beyond in the beginning. But the good thing is that the people that have already established themselves are probably pretty lazy. If you look at my blog, I think I blogged like 1 wedding this year. So there are opportunities for you if you have the time and you have the desire to get into the industry. There are things that the people that you're probably finding easily on Google that they're just straight up not doing anymore. And in 5 years and 6 years, their content could all be replaced by your content if you're smart about it.
That's, amazing educational content which you provided right now, because I know for a lot of photographers they like I think we train to, let's say, do photography, but as you said, like, we're not trained to do business, and I think that's the biggest struggle. Even though we have access to all sorts of different informations, to educational content, but to filter through all this stuff, it's also not easy, and it's time consuming, and there's a lot of crap out there, as we probably know, to get to this like essence of it. And then and I think also, even knowing all this stuff, you have to put a lot of work into this, right? It's not just you have the knowledge. So let's kind of, again, move forward with what's happening in the world of photography nowadays. And then one of the key elements I want to talk to you is the AI. What is your opinion on this? I'm not going to ask you like what's the future of photography is, because we probably don't know if this whole thing's going to unfold itself. But what is your feel on this all AI coming in, not only to photography, but coming into literally every aspect of our life? And it seems like whoever I talk to, that this AI conversation is just like going around, and then some people are optimistic, there's some people who are extremely terrified, and it's just the kind of new era we're getting into. So what is your take on it? Like, what's your thoughts and what's your opinion on this whole AI new kind of world we're getting into?
Yeah, I would say it's equal parts exciting and also terrifying. Terrifying for probably all the reasons you already know, but exciting because now when you want to write a blog post or you're just sitting at a blank page and you don't know what to write about and you don't know what topics to do, you don't know what Instagram reels to make, you can just go to ChatGPT and be like, hey, give me 25 ideas for reels that would connect with a local couple that just got engaged or looking to get married in city name, whatever. And you can be like, give me 250 ideas, and it'll give you 250 ideas, and you cycle through and you figure out which ones kind of work the best for you. I would say from that aspect, from a content aspect, it's definitely helpful. I would say from an editing aspect as well, that it's made my work super consistent. So weddings are pretty high volume editing, and I don't know, it takes like 15 minutes to edit an entire wedding, and it's pretty much bang on. Like once you dial in your profile, it's pretty incredible. So thumbs up to that, I think, for my workflow. The downside with that is now that if you're shooting your first wedding ever, you now have access to other people's profiles if you want to use like the other talent profiles to just like edit your own work in their style. So maybe the good is that you don't have to spend years developing your style, but the bad is that you maybe don't even learn to edit in Lightroom, that it just is all done for you. And then from an image generation standpoint, I think weddings are pretty safe overall. I think the travel content game is going to get disrupted in terms of kind of still images. But overall, I think if you're documenting something that's real, there's always going to be value in that. And as well as I think it's more important than ever before to actually develop a brand around yourself so that people want to hire you as the photographer, and they want to hang out with you, and they're not just hiring someone to do headshots and to come in and push the button, that they're like, I specifically want to hire this person because I like them, I trust them. And I think some of it, like even in weddings, is that people just kind of want to hang out with you. They're just like, yeah, this person looks cool. Like I would love to have them along. They're going to fit into our friend group. So I think certain areas of photography are definitely protected, but some of them will definitely see some negative aspects. But the other potential positive is that for like kind of what we've seen with film, that it's now this premium luxury because it's so real, and maybe hiring an actual photographer becomes that a much higher luxury service in the future because of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know what? It's there, but I like the discussion and debate on this, right? Because it's something that is unknown. And I remember back in the days, and I don't know if you went through that era where we switching from film to digital, and people were like screaming and kicking that the film never is going to go away, that digital will die eventually, and film will stay the way it was. I remember those conversations, but we knew deep inside that this is not going to happen, right? Like we have to adapt to this. But I think right now it's a different beast, right? And it's a little bit of different disruption. But again, like I think what is the most scary thing for me is the fact that it's progressing so fast, right? It's not something that it's just slowly changing. Like every month we see this massive shift in this whole area of digital manipulation and all this stuff. So yeah, it's a great input. I think time will tell, what's going to happen. But I agree with you that it's helping photographers to speed up the process, even with like retouching and all this stuff, right? That's pretty amazing. Because like for me, even doing headshot or portraits, and I remember wedding, the editing part was like extremely time consuming. Like this is the amount of time I think we put back in the days into this. It was just insane. And on that note, can you tell me like about, because you mentioned about people want to hang out with you, and I remember even till today, like one of my biggest, I would say, marketing approaches is when you get referrals. So, people just shoot with you wedding, and then they recommend you, and then you have just like literally sign up client, because if they know they're getting recommendation from somebody else who work with you. They coming and they want to just book you. There's no like any sales talk. It's just you're getting literally straight to the contract. So tell me about your approach to that, because it seems like it's a big part of your business that people hiring you based on recommendation, based on who you are, your personality, and word of mouth, like how that works for you.
Yeah. I think on wedding days, at least for me, and I guess this goes for any time that you'd be interacting with any client, I like to just add no stress to the situation if possible. For weddings, they could traditionally be a pretty stressful environment. If I don't come in, I don't add any stress, and I'm just the calm presence in the room. And if something goes wrong, I have solutions. If it's going to rain, no problem. We've already scouted spots. If you're that person, and people kind of pick up on that, if for instance, at a wedding, if all the bridesmaids are nervous about that it's going to rain, and you've already scouted that, and you can just convey that information quickly, it's like, oh no, I got like 3 spots. If anything does happen, or if it's really windy, you guys don't want to mess up your hair before. If you've already solved problems, I feel like that is just a really nice check mark on you. So yeah, not adding stress. It's kind of in like pre-production, solving as many problems as you can in terms of timeline. If you're doing a commercial job, that if you can come in and everything just runs completely smoothly, there's a pretty good likelihood that that client is going to hire you back in some capacity. At a wedding, it might be for family shoots in the future. For commercial, it might be that they're now hiring you for an event, or they're going to bring you in for their headshot day or whatever. I think just, yeah, by being a nice presence in the room is, I would say, the biggest way that I would get in-person referrals. I think by doing video content for myself, and not even talking about YouTube, I feel like even though I do a ton of YouTube content, I'm going to say maybe I've booked 5 weddings from people that found me on YouTube, and it's usually other photographers. My clients, my wedding clients, don't really care. Maybe they see that I do YouTube, and they go to make sure that, like, hey, like, we watched one of your videos. We don't get all the gear talk in it, but we saw that, like, it was just a nice experience. You made nice images with like challenging conditions. Maybe there's an element of that, but I feel like overall, it's pretty rare for any of my clients to even know that I do the YouTube side of my business. They're hiring me to be a photographer. They're not hiring me to do anything else. So they might have not researched that heavily. What I do notice is that for at least on social media, doing vertical content, and it's kind of changed, I would say. It's kind of changed with the algorithm as well, that now, like, the big key indicator of like a good piece of content is if it's being shared first. So like likes and comments don't really matter as much. That if you see a piece of content and you share it with 3 of your friends, that's kind of the North Star metric now for a piece of content. So that's kind of shifted myself in terms of how I make content, to make content that's going to be shared organically a lot better, which means it's going to just perform better. And if you do add some money to it, and all of a sudden you're boosting something that already works really well, and it's going to go even further. And what that means for ourselves, in at least in my wedding space, is that I want to make content that I do a lot of like comedy stuff, but that I don't think that books me clients. Maybe it does. They at least see that I'm not too serious of a person. But I would say creating content that educates people while also showing that you're an expert in this field. So again, kind of going back to those like 5 best wedding venue examples, or 5 ways to get ready for like your headshot. By coming up with content like that, that hopefully people are going to share with other people, that for a wedding, like if that gets in front of a bridesmaid, maybe they're going to share that with somebody who just got engaged. Or if it ends up in front of a mom, maybe she's going to send that to her son. There's all kinds of different ways, I guess, to leverage that. But I think knowing that's kind of an important thing. Just a little bit silly, but I don't know. That's the way it is. You got to work with the tools that you're given. And if you're not paying to be on a platform, 1, you're probably the product. And then 2, you kind of got to just do whatever they want you to do. And they set the rules, at least in the beginning. At some point, you can be the full artist and do whatever you want. And maybe that works, maybe that doesn't. But I think when you're building a business, and if you want to do it in an efficient way, it's just understand the game and play the game correctly, I guess.
Absolutely. So that leads me to the next question. Could you tell me a little bit more? And this is also like applying to, well, I remember back in the days when I was shooting weddings, and that's, I have to transfer this into my headshot photography business. Tell me a little bit about connecting with your clients, because this is one of the, I would say, biggest elements, to get hired, to get clients. Because I remember, interviewing clients or going for meetings for even potential wedding. If you click with them right on the spot, I've noticed that, there is a much bigger chance that they're going to hire you. And I also was trying to learn how I can connect with them on a much deeper level. So what is your approach to, kind of connecting with your clients, and not only before you get hired, but also throughout this entire process? Because I know weddings are specifically interesting because you have to really deeply connect with them, right? Like, you have to be their friend. You have to be their supporter. You have to be the problem solver, as you mentioned. Like you basically, I'm not saying you running the show, but you the guide person for the. I remember back in
Sometimes
the
you are.
day. Yeah, yeah. You just like, don't worry, it's gonna be working. Everything's gonna work because like you have so much experience that you've seen it all pretty much, right? Like like I don't know how many weddings you shooting, but I remember I was shooting about 40 weddings this season. So like after like you've seen it all, right? Like you really
Yeah.
could predict a lot of things. You could really see things ahead. And because those clients are not experienced, this is the first time experience, you can really give them the hand and walk them through this entire process. So yeah, I want to know your approach to connecting with your clients.
Yeah, I would say the first piece, at least for me, is I have a promotional video that basically explains, in the
Okay.
case of weddings, specifically like what wedding photography means to me and how I believe a wedding day should go. And if a couple connects with that, there's a pretty good chance that they will potentially inquire. I also have all my pricing public, so that also that even if somebody connects with like they're like, oh, we want to hire Taylor, but I'm just out of their budget. They're probably not going to contact me. And there's no like soft email to be like, hi, we don't have the budget to hire you, but like, can we work? It's just like, that's not even a conversation. That's also a choice that I've made after many years in business. That's not something you should do year one, I don't think. So promotional video, I would say, is like the key, that even if you have a little bit of behind the scenes footage and you have some work that you've done, and you can just script a voiceover, I think that's more than good enough. You can record it on your iPhone, on the speakers, they're the microphone, it's good enough. And just to have something out there, I think, that has your own actual voice is very, very helpful. So I would say that's kind of the key. And then I think a lot of my clients fall into two categories at this point. The one category that is becoming more prevalent year by year, I would say, and also probably to do with like the space I'm in terms of venues, and that they're kind of some of the nicer venues in our area. Some of my couples don't even like, they see my website, they connect with the video, they're like, okay, this is the guy for us, and they hire me, and then we exchange 3 emails before their wedding. So like my total email chain is like, on some couples, in October of this year, I had 11 emails. So that's from initial inquiry, I respond to that, they respond one time, to final gallery delivery.
Wow.
So a lot of my couples fall into that they are comfortable. They know that I'm a real life person that they're going to get along with on the day. But they don't need to be friends. They don't have time for another friend. Maybe they're doctors, maybe they're busy, they're entrepreneurs, whatever. They just don't care about me. They know that I'll fit their day, and that I'm not going to embarrass myself, and I'm not going to show up wearing Crocs and make their friends be like, why did you hire this guy? They know that I check the boxes of being an acceptable person in their friend group, which I think is important. But they don't really care beyond that. They don't follow me on Instagram. They have Instagram, but they don't follow me on it. Yet they've hired me to do this very, very expensive job and be a very intimate part of one of the most important days of their life. And then the other box that I would say, the middle part of my career. So in the beginning, I feel like I was hired a lot just to be a button pusher, that it's like, we need photographer, please. And then you get the brunt of that they don't respect you. They don't care about you. You're hired. It's the most amount of money they've ever spent on a person to show up on a day. And they're kind of mad about it a little bit. And they treat you like that. And then eventually you get to work with your ideal clients, and they really kind of want to have that relationship, that they're interacting with your content on a daily basis. And I would say from like, I started weddings 2005-ish. By 2008, I was probably into that area that people just wanted to be friends. And especially the people that are the first ones to hire you, they feel like they found like this jewel that was buried. And they're like, we can't believe that you're only $1,000 for the day. This is crazy. Like, you're amazing. And you become like, I'm legitimately still friends with a number of those couples from that era. And we talk maybe once a week, maybe once a month, over Instagram or whatever, but we're still in contact. And I would say from like 2010 until maybe 2018, that was the bulk of my couples, that everyone wanted to have some sort of friendship. There are obviously outliers that were more like most of my couples now, but it's kind of gone in phases. So I think it depends on where you're at, and also your personality as well. I would say that by tuning my business, so by putting my pricing publicly online, I definitely attract that very specific couple that's like, the example. So my buddy Lachlan, we do a company called bookfocal.com. So they built my website for me and everything. And he was the one that pushed me to put pricing public. He was like, picture like, so put yourself, at least for myself, he was like, you're going to a car dealership. You want to buy a car. What does that process look like for you? Do you want to have like all the pricing hidden and all extras and you have to physically sit down with someone? Or do you want to do the model where you just go on the internet and you're like, send me one car, please. I know exactly what I want. I know all like the options that I want. And why is there discussion? Can we just do this now? Like I'm ready to pay you. So that was one of the big things that I think tipped for me there. So I get a lot less inquiries and also a lot less people that want to hang out and be friends in real life. But I work more and I would say the overall email on that stream has also come down dramatically. It probably used to be maybe 40, 50 emails in a booking from start to finish. Now it's like, I would say maybe 20 on average, maybe even less. So that's something kind of big that changed as well. And that connects with another style of my ideal couple, I guess. And yeah, it's just kind of figuring out year to year what works for you, who you want to work with, and fine tuning your business to hopefully attract somebody that fits that new thing you want to be doing next year.
Absolutely. So let's kind of talk a little about the pricing, because this is something, because like I'm hearing different opinions on this, and then we just navigated what it's better, right? I know like weddings, it's a little bit of different story. Portraits and then headshots, it's a little bit of different story. But my question to you is, because I've noticed a lot of clients, they don't understand the process, right? They see the price and they have this kind of own thing in their heads, okay, it's really expensive, but they don't understand why. So tell me a little bit about because you mentioned you have this educational video prior, right? So you're sending them off, and so they have a little bit of better understanding. So how much, in your opinion, we should educate your clients so they understand the pricing better? Because, like I remember back in the days, like weddings are not cheap, because headshots a little bit of different story. Weddings, if you're a good photographer and you establish, the prices are much, much higher, right? Like we're not talking about $1,000. We're talking like, quite investment to put, they have to put it in to hire you. So how you educate your clients to understand this pricing better?
I think, again, it kind of comes down to those two different aspects. So now I think that I don't really educate a whole lot, that people know what they want. And I know I definitely miss out on some potential bookings because of this, but also I take that as at the trade for getting my time back and not having, I used to probably get maybe like 4, 5 inquiries some days when I was really dominant with SEO and also doing paid ads. So I'd be getting a lot of inquiries, but I would only be booking maybe 10% or less probably of the initial inquiries that came in. If they responded, if they set up a meeting, then it was closer to like 80, 90%. But just from initial inquiry, when I was just like kind of had a rough price on my website, people would come in and be like, oh, well, we don't actually have like $7,000 to spend on this. So sorry. And they just ghost you. And that's probably the reason. Yeah. So I think that was, I guess, in previous times, it was the way that I ran things. And I would say by having that starting price and getting people to inquire, and also kind of fine tuning your sales strategy and your email scripts for when people come in, and what you do if you send them a video message to say, hey, thanks so much for inquiring, or if you text them, or whatever that workflow looks like for you, to find something that works specifically for you in that market. I feel like it's important to have a lot of inquiries coming in. But yeah, that was, I guess, in terms of pricing, that's kind of how I figured out what works. That I would hear from some couples and they just didn't have the budget. And then I would figure out like, okay, so if we take out the album, can you now afford this price? And then we'd figure it out in the beginning. I'm even to this day, I'm still pretty versatile with my pricing, that if somebody comes in and they're like, the new thing for weddings, at least for my business to do photo video, is that couples will come in and they'll be like, hey, can we have a video, but then also can you do our family photos? So I won't be hired as a photographer. I'll be hired to do video primarily, like a documentary video, but then I'm also doing like maybe 10 or 15 photos during the ceremony, and then family photos as well. So people sometimes have unique requests that will find their way into becoming part of my price sheet. But I think it just comes from experience and just being active in the community and figuring out what connects with couples exactly where you're at in the world. Whatever is working for me here might work in a different way where you're at, or it might not work at all. It might be completely different from something also that, I don't know, you yourself are probably pretty close to your ideal client. And if I'm telling you to make a promotional video, and if you ever went to a website and that would be a huge turnoff for you, that there's a person on a screen talking to me, I hate this. Don't do that. There's different ways to book couples and to target your ideal couple. So I think it's just overall figuring out what's working, figuring out for pricing what is in your market, and trying to make your market, especially in the beginning, is very difficult. And by that I mean either pricing way too low and putting yourself in a space that no one else is at, or way too high as well is also a bit of a danger. So yeah, start with whatever is currently working, whatever you see people offering in your local area, and probably start with a roughly similar price as well. And build up and see what works from there, and discount if people are getting married 3 feet away from your house at the building next door. I have no problems doing things like that, especially in the beginning. I would come up with excuses for discounts. Like, oh, it's Friday, but it's the 17th of the month. It's the 17th of the month for Friday discount. So $50 off you book by the end of the month. I'd come up with all kinds of crazy stuff. Make it make sense. Don't just do stuff like that. But if there is like an end of the year discount, or somebody inquires for like the last Saturday you're available in July, and you're pretty confident that maybe you're not going to get another inquiry for that date, figure out a way to make it work. Don't drastically compromise your pricing and integrity, and don't like undercut the market entirely. But overall, like, I kind of have no problems doing that. If it does mean securing a booking, and securing a booking a little bit quicker usually.
Yeah. I found, like, in my at least experience, that the more discounts I was giving, or I was just like, trying, there was few situations where it was completely opposite, but most of the time I've noticed that if I was just cutting off the price because they were just pushing on me, usually those were the trouble couples. There's always issues and problems, and it's like in the wedding industry, you don't want to have any issues with your clients, right? Like, you want to go through the process, you want to close the deal, you want to do the job and just move on. But as soon as they starting kind of making your life difficult, then it's becoming quite interesting. And then I think we, especially at the beginning, where you don't have things figured out yet, typically what happens, you running into those clients, right?
Yeah. Well, you don't know what the red flags are in the beginning. You don't know if somebody asking for discount is a red flag, or if it's just because you're a little bit too expensive for your market. But yeah, I definitely, I'd also say that people that bargain really hard are usually the least likely to actually convert as well. So the people now that come in, they know the price, they know everything. I would say I run probably like a 95%, maybe even higher some months, conversion. So if someone inquires, they've seen my pricing, like they're just pretty much booked. And the inquiry is more of just like hey, it's actually like a booking request. Like, it's, if you go through my website, it's like request a book instead of, like an inquire for pricing or anything. So yeah, that works really well. But in the beginning, it's a little bit different, and it takes a few years to figure out like, hey, really didn't enjoy working with this couple. Need to figure out why. And then you start seeing the parallels. It's like, okay, so like these 3 people all did this, or venues specifically also have like a weird, like we all have our ideal couples, and venues have their ideal couples as well. So sometimes there's venues that everyone there is just a nightmare. Sometimes there's planners that every single one of their clients is just crazy because maybe they're a crazy planner and that's who they're attracting. So it takes a few years, but it's fun. It's fun problem solving.
Oh, absolutely. I found, like I had to trust my gut feeling sometimes, because you have this, like, I don't even know how many times like I went for these meetings, and then you feel it like, oh, this is not going to be good, right? But
it's money.
Yeah, you're trying to get them because you got to pay the bills. It's another client, it's another opportunity. But deep inside, it's like every cell of your body telling you like, stay away from these people because it's going to be problems. So let me ask you another question about, like, I know weddings are quite interesting, and every wedding brings something different to the table. It's always learning process. So tell me, is any kind of story which kind of stick to your mind you would like to share?
You always encounter unique things. In the beginning, so my first wedding that I ever got hired to do was a free one off of Craigslist. I think I was like, I just want, if you're getting married in the next 3 months, like I need portfolio. So they hired me, but because I was free, they didn't trust me. So they hired another team and they paid them like $500. So I showed up at this like super sketchy house in a place that I probably wouldn't usually drive. And they were doing photos. So I arrived and the father let me in and they were doing photos in the basement. And this was still to this day the weirdest wedding photography thing I've ever seen. So they're doing photos in the basement. They've closed all the blinds. It's completely dark. They have like quantum flash packs, like really making a lot of light in there, but bouncing in weird spots. And then they had an assistant show up, and the assistant had like a 4-foot reflector, and they were bouncing the flash off the person holding the reflector, even though there was like lots of light surfaces it could have bounced off of. And their kit was at the time it was like a Takina like 11 to 18 millimeter lens. It was like on a crop body. But they were doing all these family photos sitting on a couch in the basement with beautiful light that they could have used. Like there was enough windows that they could have made it just fine. But they were running this like crazy setup, bouncing off this person. I think they had about 5 people on their team, which was also crazy. So I went into my first wedding and I was like, oh, I guess I'm not even the photographer today. And I'm like, at first I'm kind of upset, but then like, well, now there's no pressure. I'm here to do whatever I want for my portfolio. And this is great. And then I realized pretty quickly that like a bad photo video team or a challenging one can ruin a lot of things. And I would say that it definitely, because there was like 8 people at the wedding, like 8 guests. And when you have a team of 5 people plus myself, so 6, I guess, at a wedding, it's just like, it's chaos. The couple got married in a gazebo, but the gazebo only had one entrance. So the team was climbing up the back. So it was raised gazebo. So it was on like a 4 or 5 foot riser. And they were like climbing up and climbing around like on the railings behind them to like get up and get shots. And it was really crazy. This was also before AI editing, that I couldn't just easily remove them, that I had to go in and clone brush them out. But yeah, it was my first wedding was definitely an example of like how I did not ever want to run a wedding day. Yeah. And then I got some great images. I probably got like 5 images that I love from that, and they were in my portfolio for a bunch of years. And then I think the couple overall, it was probably like actually a year later when they got their photos back, which is also, again, like something that I would never want to do to my couple. They asked if I could fix some of the images, and they sent me them, which was amazing to actually see the final results, because I didn't think I'd ever get to see them. And they were as crazy as you'd expect for like a basement. I think everything must have been at like f16, not enough light. They shot in JPEG. And they were like, can you do it? Like, we saw your photos and they're great. Can you do anything to like help save some of these like family photos? And I think I converted some to black and white. And then I said it'd be like $30 an hour or something if they wanted me to do more, and they never heard from them again. So, yeah. So for free, they wanted the retouching, but for $30 an hour, goodbye. But that's like the struggle of working with free couples. But I got some, like, it's selfishly, I got what I needed from the day. I got some portfolio. I got to see a great example of how I never wanted to run a wedding. And I would say in terms of learning, that was like a unique experience that I'm happy I've never had to deal with again.
Yeah, I think what is fascinating, and doesn't matter which genre of photography you're in, you have to go through a lot of crap till you get to the point where you can really, maybe not enjoying what you're doing, but you have to go through these really rough times. And then, if you're not going to give up, you're going to learn from it. You're going to just like, okay, you know what, this is just a learning curve, and I have to get there. And I remember those weddings too. Like one of my first ones was exactly the same scenario, like, really awkward location, weird people, which you just like looking at them like, and you just asking yourself like, what the hell I'm doing here, when you're just fighting with your like own emotions, because you have to go through it, you have to make it work somehow. And I know how interesting that experience is, but again, just builds the strength right in you, and then you move on to the next thing. I will share one story which happened to me, and I never share it because like I don't talk much about the weddings. But I had one wedding that was like right at the beginning, and I got into a car accident. So like basically it was 4-way stop, and I drove through the intersection, and the guy on the bike hit me. So, and he was without helmet. Like he just borrowed this bike from his friend. Like he's completely like, messed up because, he hit my car, he hit the pavement. And I had like ceremony within like 30 minutes. I'm like, I gotta go. Like, I cannot stay here. Even my car is damaged. I'm like, I had to go to this wedding. So I just left the number. There's like a bunch of people came in. to help the guy. And I said to them, like, I'm going to be in this church, like literally 2 blocks down. And then, the police want to talk to me. Yeah, please come in, and then I'll talk to them. So this is massive wedding, and there's like, I don't know, like 5 police cars waiting on the front of it, and they're waiting for me, right? Like, we want to talk to the photographer, and everyone is like, what the hell is going on here, right? So like, I briefly talked to them, like, I cannot go, like, please leave me. I don't know what I have to do. Like, this is this guy fault. I will be more than I got to finish this whole thing. And they let me go. But there was like this like, what was, I felt bad about it because there was this discussion, entire wedding, like, this whole situation, that there was a cops waiting for the photographer after the ceremony. Yeah, so that's one of my crazy stories which happened to me.
Well,
so, but I know we all go through it, right? Yeah. Anyway, so my last question to you is, what would be advice to photographers who starting off in this industry? Like, what would be your kind of the one advice you would give it to someone who would like to get into this business, would like to be wedding photographer, and would like to be successful, like, based on your 20 plus years of experience? What would be your advice?
I think it just comes down to what I mentioned before, that always be creating a portfolio and then just never stop actually doing that. And I think that that's something that I didn't realize how important it was at the beginning, but I think that it becomes more and more important as years go on. And especially if you want to get started quickly and you want to get started with the couples and the clients that you actually want to work with, by creating as much work in that, in that sector as possible, you're able to really kind of accelerate the growth of your business, figure out what is working as well, and start doing some paid ads with that also. I think that in the beginning, a lot of us are like, oh, my business needs to succeed organically, or I haven't made it. Mm-hmm. And I think there is like an element that you should have some organic success, but then also not everyone in your community or your marketing area is going to just organically come across you. So by adding a few dollars a day to that, I feel like it really just accelerates your growth in a way that you probably wouldn't organically find for quite some time. So yeah, don't be afraid of that.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you so much for this very insightful conversation. I truly appreciate it. The business tips you provide today, they're amazing. I know everyone who's going to be listening to this, they should make a lot of notes and put that into their, implementing this whole thing into their own business. That's something which, it's pretty amazing. And I hope this is not our first and last conversation. I would love to, catch up at some point again, and then talk about, how this whole thing is changing. I think the next year is going to be quite interesting. We'll see how this whole thing is going to be unfolding. Sure. There's a lot of changes, and I'll plug it in all your informations. If there's anything specific you'd like to share, I don't know. I know you have some courses happening. You have some stuff you do to educate photographers. Can you share that a little bit? What do you do?
Yeah, pretty much everything's on YouTube. There's obviously like paid bonus content, but I would say YouTube is a good place to start. There's a bunch of behind the scenes real wedding days. And I would say that they're probably the most valuable if you're trying to get into weddings and it's just kind of like an unknown of what a wedding day looks like for a photographer. I think I have like 80 full wedding days up there now. Oh, wow. As well as a lot of other content. And then if you decide you want to go more into the business of it, a lot of my business content's over on my course's website. But if you're watching YouTube, you'll come across that when it's needed.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. And we definitely will be in touch. And again, I'm going to be just keep looking at your content because I truly love it. And as I said, I've been watching you for many years.
Yeah. So I appreciate you having me on the show, and thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you.